I'm Bridget Ford, a member of Ireland's ATGI, which is an Irish organisation for approved tour guides. This year's Heritage Week, we will be offering you a range of topics from our experienced guides here at the Cliffs of Moher. We hope you will gain an insight into the clues of our past, how our heritage has sculpted us as a community and influenced the development of our society. Our heritage is our inheritance after all, a footprint from the past to be nourished and gifted to the youth. Let our guides take you on this wonderful journey through time, told by our landscape, our fertile rock, our folklore and our traditions. The legends and falls from the leap of the foes to Isle na Sharach, to the unrequited love of Mel and Cuchulainn. Ciara will be our Shanos.
Hello, my name is Ciara and welcome to a mystical day here at the Cliffs of Moher. Now, I studied a Masters in History, and from a very young age I had a wonder and awe, particularly in terms of local history and folklore. As a very young child, I'd sit on the floor around the fire and my granddad would be sitting on a stool, or my dad, and we'd listen to old tales, whether they were folklore, local legends, and they were quite spooky too. There were stories about the Banshee and Jack-o'-lantern, the Headless Horseman, the Coach of Bower. And you know, this really sparked an interest that I would carry forward into my future. One of my most favourite stories that my father told me was how Hag's Head got its name. So down there to the south of the cliffs is an area known as Hag's Head. And by a hag, I mean a witch. And the story goes, an old hag called Mal fell in love with the Irish warrior Cuchulainn. Now, Cuchulainn didn't return his feelings to Mal, and this made her outrageously crazy. So she decided to chase Cuchulainn, and the chase went wildly all along the edge of the cliff, over mountains, through the burn, across the land of County Clare until they reached Loop Head. And at Loop Head, Mal was convinced she had Cuchulainn cornered there on the edge of a cliff. But Cuchulainn, being a remarkably powerful warrior, managed to leap from sea stack to sea stack all the way back to the Cliffs of Moher. And Mal tried to follow him once again, but her not being as nimble on her footing, slipped on a sea stack and dashed against the side of the cliffs to a gruesome death. And they say her blood flowed throughout the Atlantic Ocean as far as the town of Milltown, which henceforth became known as Milltown Malbay. And they also say the cliffs took on the formation of her face. So down near the very end, you'll see a kind of a rock formation just in front of the signal tower, and that's where we have poor Mal. Now, there's another story about the north side of the cliffs, about an area known as Isle na Sharach, which means the Cliff of the Foals. And we all know about St. Patrick, so we're aware that when St. Patrick came to Ireland, he banished the snakes. But the snakes in this story are a reference to our pagan ancestors. So at the time in Ireland, the Celtic gods and leaders were a tribe known as the Tuatha De Danann, or the people of the divine goddess Danu. Now, this tribe were infuriated at the bringing of Christianity to Ireland by St. Patrick. So they decided to retreat into the underworld, into the caves and into the land of County Clare. And after many hundreds of years of living in the underworld, it came their time to be called out. So in the form of beautiful white foals, 7 Tuatha De Danann gods galloped out into the light of day, which they had not seen for many years. Spooked and blinded by the light, they didn't realise they were heading straight here for the Cliffs of Moher. They galloped and leaped over the cliffs and passed into the afterlife. And beneath the area from where they leaped now break some of the most magnificent waves in Ireland, known as Aileens. And a lot of visitors that come here look down at those waves and they think they can see beautiful white foals galloping through them. We also get world-class surfers who come to surf.
Singing and dancing, a history of culture, a unique story told through our generations. Teresa, her family and Pat will reel in the years.
My name is Teresa and I'm a tour guide here at the Cliffs of Moher, which I have worked with the last 14 years. Music and heritage has been a huge part of the tourism at the Cliffs of Moher since the very beginning. I was lucky enough to be born just 9 kilometres down the road in the village of Doolin, which is renowned worldwide for Irish traditional music. I grew up alongside the Russell brothers. You've Maiko, you've Packy, you've Gussie. My uncle Willie Beg Shannon used to play music in our kitchen every night with Sharon Shannon, used to come to get some tunes from him, with John and Paddy Kaluri, with Steve McNamara, Christy Barry and Sharon Shannon. O'Connor's pub in Doolin was known worldwide for music in Fisher Street, and it hosted many Irish famous musicians. And as Christy Moore says in his song Listow'n Varna, if it's music you want, you have to come to Clare. And I'm very proud to say that the music has stayed in my family, and that my daughter Kate and my son Jack, they busk here at the Cliffs on a daily basis.
Now, busking has been at the Cliffs for generations. Even Cornelius O'Brien, when he used to bring his guests above up to the tower, O'Brien's Tower, he used to have a piper playing there on the arrival of his guests. Since then, a fellow by the name of Dinny McMahon, he's really started the busking here at the Cliffs in the late 50s. Now, he himself, he went to America. He spent years in America in the early 50s, and he came home in the late 50s knowing what the American people wanted. And he saw the opportunity, as he said, to make an old few bob. Now, Dinny, he used to play the tin whistle, and he used to also tell stories, and he used to also sell CDs. And he used to pick these blackthorn sticks, and he used to also sell them at the Cliffs. Now, today, things have changed slightly. In 1996, they have 6 what we call busking pitches all around the site. The people that plays in them are Timber Tony, and you have actually a woman, she's a German woman by the name of Cozy. She plays the concertina. Timber Tony plays the flute. And we have Noel Moore that plays the accordion. And we have Michael Galvin, which plays the tin whistle and banjo. All around the site, they have their own little pitches. Now sometimes they play in the morning, and in the evening then the pitch might be shared by 2 musicians. Now up behind me is Kate and Jack Lavin, and they have their own pitch, and in the summertime they come here a few times a week, playing music and doing a bit of busking. When Dinny started busking at the Cliffs, this was his pitch. Before they erected this central platform here, there was an old wall running along here, and this stone was a kind of a capping for the wall, so where the Dinny used to sit down every day, and that's where he used to play the tin whistle and sell his CDs. Now, when they did it up, this is the stone. They kept it and they screwed it onto the wall, and they have his name in it, and when he started at the Cliffs, which was 1959.
The unique geology here at the Cliffs, the beautiful landscape of the burn, a sight you will not see anywhere else in the world. Colm will rock on.
Hello and welcome, folks. I'll be giving you a brief history now on the geology of the Cliffs of Moher, and the first thing to remember when considering the geology of the Cliffs of Moher is that they are still a work in progress. It is a story as old as time itself. Back 320 million years ago, we were in far better climate than we are now, closer to Brazil. We can tell that when we look at the stone, the fossilization of coral along the rock and the stone. Now, the cliffs themselves was part of a large river delta near that southern equator in a large landmass. Each layer was formed as silt poured out of the river delta. As you look along the cliff ranges, you will see ledges and various rock faces that were formed over those 320 million years, and each of those is a chapter in the story of how the cliffs was formed. Now, some of these ledges and these areas known as stratification would be siltstone, sandstone, and Numerian shale. Now, in modern times, we can see birds such as fulmars, kittiwakes, and other gulls who nest all year round here, and it's quite a popular spot for them to get away from predators and have access to where they feed in the sea.
Building houses, dancing on floors, this unique stone has been shipped to the other side of the world. Rugged seas and Atlantic storms. Tom will step back in time for us.
My name is Tom Doherty. I'm a ranger here at the Cliffs, and before I came here I used to work with stone, building stone walls. I also worked in some of the local quarries which are along the cliffs here, and if you were to walk towards Hagshead you will come on some of those local quarries on the edge of the cliff. So way back when the cliffs were formed about 319 million years ago, these flagstones were formed from silt over millions of years. So here we got one of the flagstones, and it's got the trail of the unknown mollusk, and what they call the meandering trail of the unknown mollusk or worm. And as the local quarrymen quarry these flagstones, to cut the stone before modern technology like diamond tip blades, they'd look for the salt joints in the flagstone. And these are the salt joints here, running along the flagstone. They'd also look for the bed of the stone, to lift the stone out of the ground. And what they'd look for is what they call the free bed, which in that free bed was more than water. And they'd drive in wedges and take out a chunk of this flagstone, and then they tap along the salt joint and cut it into different sizes. So a stone like this, 2 men could lift it up on its edge and 1 man could walk it to stack it by the wall. And this one here has got a lovely pattern, so this would have been water flowing along the top of it, and it's got a lovely ripple pattern, and this would be calmer waters, whereas this one here has a bigger ripple on it, and it would be a bit rough water. And you would see this pattern sometimes on the sandstone on the beaches like Lahinch or Fauna or down in Doolin. So here is, on this one here, it's been cut with the diamond tip blade, which is modern technology, and the fat trucks of today move the flagstone around. One time it was all done by hand. Way back in the early 1900s, there was a trade between the UK and Ireland when the coal came into the local village of Liscannor, and the coal boats on their way back to England, they took back paving stones and some curbstones to pave the streets of Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, London. That was a big trade, like, you know, between the UK and Ireland, between the coal and the flagstone. And there were many, many men employed down in the harbour, loading and unloading those boats.
The generous landlord, a folly and a tale. Gerard will be our host today.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Cliffs of Moher. My name is Gerard and I'm a tour guide at the Cliffs of Moher. Today I am very excited to be able to talk to you about O'Brien's Tower and the history associated with this iconic building. When I'm usually holding a tour at the tower here, many people ask me, what is actually the tower for? Some have suggested, is it a lighthouse or a lookout tower? But unfortunately it's neither. If I was to use the technical word, it was built as a folly to entertain and wine his guests. The tower was built in 1835 by Cornelius O'Brien, who was a local Protestant landlord living in this area who owned 10,000 acres of land. They said of him that he owned everything in this area except the Cliffs of Moher. Now, because he was a man of great standing, he was also a barrister and also a member of an MP of Westminster for 20 years. So in the 1860s into the 1900s, many visitors would have been coming from the UK and Europe, and they would have been very affluent people that would have been on holidays here. So they would ride up on horseback and change the horses at the stables down quite close to the visitor centre and ride up in fresh horses. And here they would be entertained and wined. And no doubt they would have had been served some wonderful refreshments as well. And what a marvellous sight they would have to see, the magnificence of the world famous Cliffs of Moher, the Aran Islands here, or the 12 Pins of Connemara, as well as the Atlantic Ocean there in front of them, lashing against the Cliffs of Moher. Now, over the years, the O'Brien's Tower had fallen into disrepair because of its proximity to the sea. You must take into account that it's the highest point of the cliffs. It's situated 702 feet above sea level, situated between two villages of Liscannor to the south and Doolin to the north. So it would be exposed to high winds and seas, and as a result it had fallen into disrepair. Various attempts over the years in the 1970s and 2008 by different bodies to repair the tower, but it was not until 2019 when Clare County Council came on board and spent almost £400,000 in a major renovation work of this iconic building, O'Brien's Tower. And they applied this wonderful lime render to the outside of the building, which restored it to its former glory, which we just see here as at the moment. Internally, the windows were all replaced and a new spiral staircase was installed. So let's go inside and see what O'Brien's Tower really looks like. Now, here at the Cliffs, we are so fortunate to have some wonderful guides who will bring to life the O'Brien story in story and in visual effects. Now, if you look at the floor straight away, you can see that it is the scanner stone. If we look up higher onto the roof there of the building, on the ground floor again, where you can see the O'Brien Crest of Honour hanging from the rooftop. So let's go upstairs and see on the first floor. And on the first floor, we can see the walls adorned with so many clippings from newspapers from the 1860s of people advertising accommodation in this area. So you can see from back in the 1860s, people were coming here to visit the Cliffs of Moher and O'Brien's Tower, and they continue to flock in their numbers to this wonderful iconic building known as the O'Brien's Tower. Of course, everybody wants to go up on top to the top floor, and certainly the top floor is the mecca for all camera enthusiasts, where they can take some wonderful, awesome pictures of the Cliffs of Moher or the Aran Islands and share them with their families throughout the world. Another piece of infrastructure that Cornelius O'Brien built was the O'Brien Bridge between Lahinch and Liscannor. It was commissioned in 1833 and was finished in 1836. Now this bridge is still in existence, and we pass over it every day en route to work. Another piece of infrastructure that he built was what we call these reliever wells, and these were wells where people would stop off maybe en route to the cliffs to get refreshments for their horses and for themselves, and I'm sure it was a place of regalia and stories were exchanged, and there's one quite close to St. Bridget's Wells. So in recognition of the wonderful work that Cornelius O'Brien had done for the locals in this community, they built a 70-foot column close by to St. Bridget's Well in recognition of this great work that this gentleman has done. So he's left a completely indelible mark, both politically and historically, in this whole area. Thank you for watching the video. Hope you've enjoyed it.
A vast array of birds call the cliffs their home, both seasonal and permanent residents. Mike will fly us through it.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm a customer service agent here at the Cliffs of Moher. One of the jobs I do here and really enjoy is being a tour guide. And the part of tour guiding that I'm really interested in is pointing out the sort of the wildlife, the flora and fauna of the cliffs. People come here, a lot of them come just to look at the majesty of what's behind us here. The view, of course, it's fantastic. But a lot don't sort of pay any attention to the bird life, which we have, and it's literally coming out of our ears at this time of the year. For instance, when I came over from the car park this morning on my way to work, I saw just some rooks hanging around, a couple of wagtails hanging around, and as you approach the cliffs you think, oh, this is just some sort of farmland. There's sheep and cattle grazing, and a hare ran out in front of me, and oftentimes we'd see a little fox. We have a fox who has had some cubs here recently, so we keep an eye on her and the family. And when you get closer to the cliff, you realise that you're actually on a mountain top, because you're 200 metres up, and your eyes and your ears are telling you that you're getting more elevated. And that's part of the story of the cliffs, really. When you get to the edge and you look over, it's a wow. You've kind of been lulled into a false sense of security that you're just walking up a slight incline. But if you take a moment to have a look at the bird life and the wildlife, it changes the closer you get to the cliffs. So whereas in the car park you're looking at sort of rooks and wagtails and sort of little pipits, as you approach the edge of the cliff you'll see choughs, and they sort of dance around. They're a black crow with a red beak and red feet. They're part of the crow family, but they're an alpine species, and that immediately tells you that you're at a certain altitude and you're coming up on 200 metres. Now, this wall I'm standing against here was built by Cornelius O'Brien back in 1834, a year before the tower was built. And this was built as a bet with the King of England at the time, but it's done us a massive service in looking after the wildlife. We've now become a special protection area based specifically on 7 bird species that we have here. The chough is one of them. They're resident here, and nesting just below us at the moment there are peregrine falcons, and of course they like making their nests on really precipitous cliffs. As well as those, we have at the moment the auk species, all 3 species of auks. We've got puffins, razorbills and guillemots, and they're nesting at different levels up on the cliffs. In fact, the choughs will nest on grassland area, and they'll burrow like rats. Then we have a lot of gulls that come here, migratory gulls, and we have the kittiwake, which makes the noise, kittiwake, 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 and is aptly named. And we also have a fulmar, which is a kind of distant relative, a distant cousin if you like, of the albatross. And you'll see them lazily flying around the cliffs here with their wings spread out, and they never really beat. They just sort of leap off the edge and just fly around. So people often ask what my favourite species of bird is here. A lot of people think, oh, it's got to be the puffin because of their big sort of clown face and the way that they can't really fly. But actually, I love a fulmar. As I say, they're a relative of the albatross. They don't really do much. They're very sedentary lives. They sort of go out, hunt a little bit, come back in. But if anything tries to predate them, this is when they come into their own. They have a little gland on their beak, which allows them to dip down into the water, and it's actually a desalination plant. So what they actually do is they take in the salt water and eject the sand, and they keep a little bit of the sand right on top of their beak in this little plant. And if anything comes near their nest, like a predator, like a chough or a raven or a peregrine falcon, they'll go at it and they'll just fly by and they'll regurgitate some of the semi-rotten food they've got in their gizzard along with this snotty salt, and they'll spit it out at speed on that bird to disable their wings. So it'll disable that bird, they won't be able to fly anymore. Our heritage here, in my opinion, is what's been left behind by our forefathers. It's been the land use, it's been the geology that's led to a unique habitat. I mean, this piece of land we're standing on 300 million years ago was in Brazil. So, it's been left to us. It's our heritage. And I think the most important thing about our heritage is to pass that on so that future generations will have a heritage like we've had.
Sea pink, heel all and spotted orchids are some of the fantastic wildflowers that carpet the landscape here at the Cliffs. Pollinators, fauna and folklore set the scene for the most beautiful backdrop. Kieran will reveal all.
Hi folks, my name is Kieran. Welcome to one of the most beautiful places in Ireland, the Cliffs of Moher. I'm going to say a few words today about flora and fauna here at the Cliffs. We manage 18 acres here and have 100 varieties of plants and grasses. Very important for over 90 species of bees, 28 species of moths and butterflies. We also have meadow pipit, willy wagtail. We have swallows that come here every year and bring out 2 broods of chicks. And we have a variety of 70 types of snails, all feed the birds. When we talk about managed grasses, here we let the grass grow to seed. The seeds fall at the end of the year. They germinate again next spring and grow better. This year now we're going to bring in 2 horses to cut and trample the grass and manure it and help it to recover for next year. In intensive farming, this process would not be acceptable. The grass would be mowed and then sprayed and rotivated and ploughed, slurry put out and manured, and it would be eaten again at 100 centimetres high to feed high quality cows to produce milk and high quality beef. The plants that grow here at the Cliffs of Moher have many uses. Red and white clover, the dandelions, bird's foot trefoil, oxeye daisy, wild thyme, knapweed, thistle. All these are very good for pollination. In the past, many of these were used in medicines. Sea pink, a beautiful pink flower, 80 species in total, used in the treatment of epilepsy. Wild thyme, a great favourite of the people and insects. It was used in folklore as a sedative. Heel all, another plant, an edible weed that can be used in stews, soups, salads. It contains vitamins A, C and K, reduces blood sugar levels in diabetes, and at the moment some of its properties are being tested for cancer. Common spotted orchid, it grows in woodland and hedgerows and roadside verges. 28 species in total, 25 are found in the Burren National Park. Bird's foot trefoil, because of its attractiveness to the wide variety of insects, excellent for wildflower gardens, fixes the nitrogen and great for improving the soil. Scurvy grass, another one, sailors used it at sea for vitamin C. Other flowers found here at the cliffs include kidney vetch, sea campion, sheep spit and common yarrow.
I will leave you with Jared, who will give you a little history on how it all evolved.
Hello everybody, my name is Jared Morrissey. I'm working here at the Cliffs of Moher since March of 2019. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the history of the site. And when I talk about the history of the site, I also talk about the heritage. And heritage is really like our inheritance. And when you talk about our inheritance, we've inherited the name, I suppose, Moher, Cliffs of Moher. So why is it Moher? And the reason Moher is behind me as I speak to you, I can see Hag's Head and I can see the signal tower on Hag's Head. And that signal tower was built in the early 1800s, a Napoleonic signal tower built by the British. They thought Napoleon was going to attack Ireland. It didn't happen, as it were. But some of the stones or the stonework that's used in building that is from an ancient fort, 1st century of the Iron Age. And that ancient fort, the Irish name for an old ruined ancient fort is Moher, and hence the name Cliffs of Moher. That's the reason it's called Moher. So moving swiftly along, we're going to move to the 1500s. And I suppose the next big event in the 1500s is the Armada. And the Armada was a fleet that set out from Spain, going to attack England. And it went up the east coast of England, and a storm came, and then the Elizabethan forces, the Navy, Sir Francis Drake, chased them, and they went round the north of Scotland and came down the west coast of Ireland. And this would be one of the lookout posts that the local High Sheriff here in County Clare, Buttias Clancy, would have used. And he would have spotted them coming along, and legend has it that he lit some fires and tried and lured them into the coast, and did. And there's a number of places in County Clare where some of the ships floundered, and sadly, of course, he was under orders from the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland to slaughter and kill all the sailors that were on board, no matter what condition they were in. Moving swiftly along, our next big event is the early 1800s. Our local landlord was Cornelius O'Brien, and he was also a member of Parliament. And he certainly left us a legacy or a heritage, as it were, because he built the pathways, built the original fences, built stables for the horses, would have developed the site as a tourist attraction for the 1800s. He also built what's now known as O'Brien's Tower. And O'Brien's Tower, built really as a folly, a place of entertainment. Didn't have any practical use like the signal tower at Hag's Head. And we have evidence, strong evidence, in the local newspaper clippings. Tourism in the cliffs in the 1800s, in the mid-1800s, people were writing about it. They were impressed by the views and what was available here. He even had a round table down in the edge of the cliff where people could sit and enjoy themselves. Moving along, then, sadly, O'Brien's family and that estate, it declined, as it were. 1960s sees a big step with the site. A German industrialist was going to buy the area here, buy some land from the Considine family. The local authority, Clare County Council, got to hear of it, and they stepped in, and they actually purchased what is now the site, purchased about 2 acres from the Considine family. And that enabled what's now seen as a visitor centre. In the 70s, we had the local tourism group, Shannon Tourism. They refurbished and repaired O'Brien's Tower and made it a visitor centre, and they built a small little gift shop here in the area. Then in the 1990s, Clare County Council, they commissioned a competition among the architects in the Royal Institute of Architects of Ireland, and a firm in Cork won that. They were O'Riordan, Reddy and Staheley, and they were the ones that won the competition to build this lovely building underneath the hill. You cannot actually see it from the road, like it's not visible anywhere around. And they built as well, upgraded the facilities, the pathways here along the edge of the cliff. And that opened in 2007, and that's really what the system we're operating now. In 2011, the Burren and Cliffs of Moher, they're awarded UNESCO recognised global geopark status. Geoparks are special regions with outstanding geology and local culture, regions that support sustainable development and cultural heritage by working closely with local communities, agencies and businesses. The work of the geopark, together with local tourism businesses, committed to making the area a premier worldwide destination for responsible tourism, continues to this day. Here in the Cliffs of Moher, we operate the Leave No Trace policy. And Leave No Trace is really advice for visitors who come to sensitive areas such as this. And there are just 7 principles or 7 little things that you should do. One is that you plan ahead. The second is that you respect animals and wildlife. You just leave them be, as it were. Third is that you consider others when you're here. Number 4, that you minimise the effects of fire. That you use durable ground when you're camping and walking on. That you dispose of your rubbish properly. These are the principles. And I suppose the reason for these is, like, we have inherited this great heritage and this site, and we want to leave that for others for the future. Thank you.